All right, everybody, welcome back to another Master and Apprentice video and podcast. So as you guys can tell from the title, today we are kind of breaking down, but mostly reviewing the new Jedi Survivor game. To start off with, kind of break it down a little bit, just to kind of give you guys, a brief summary. So to start off with, we have a bunch of new stuff from the original game. I think the biggest thing was lightsaber stances. When you play the first game, kind of towards the end, a bit of the resolution is you fix your lightsaber and then you get a double-sided lightsaber, right? And that's kind of part of your resolution. And I think everyone was looking forward to the possibility of, switching between having a lightsaber doubled or one side or whatever, right? And so this game, they brought you those possibilities and they went above and beyond. They gave you 5 different stances to start off with. Well, you don't start off with it, but you pretty much have 5 to work with through the whole game. You briefly get them as you go on. The main one, obviously, is the classic, just one-sided lightsaber. To start off with, I think you get the double-sided lightsaber right away, too. So you can switch between them. And then the third one you get relatively early, which is my personal favorite. It's the one I really only used through the game, was the dual wield. You get it halfway through your first boss fight, which is in the first couple hour, maybe a second hour in. Then we have the blaster and lightsaber. So one hand you have a lightsaber, one hand you have a blaster. And I'll explain each of these in a second, kind of how they work. And then the last, but not least, was the cross guard. It's supposed to look kind of like Kylo Ren's, but it's a little bit longer. So cross guard one, it's much bigger, so the attacks are way slower, but they do a lot more damage. They kind of break through your block because you have like a block bar, and so that's kind of what the cross guard is good for. But it's very slow and it's not good for parrying. The blaster one's really good because you have a blaster, so you can play with the ranged enemies. So that's probably one of the more fun ones. Wasn't my personal favorite because I like the dual wield the best. But it's fun. It was probably the most unique for sure. The dual wield was my favorite. It's the best for speed wise. You can move the quickest when you have the dual wield. Very good for parrying in that case too. Doesn't do the most damage though. And then the double-sided is very offensive based, so it is good for damage, all that, speed, parrying. But for defense, it's not. It's probably one of the more weaker ones. And then the classic is just probably the best for in the middle. You can always equip 2 different stances, and so you can switch between the 2, and you can change which stances you have equipped at the save points. So yeah. And then they had a bunch of new like side quests / bosses. So one of the things I wouldn't say early, but relatively early, probably in the first quarter of the game, is Grease has a bar, and you kind of have like a home base there, right? So you can collect things, and there's different things that you can collect and showcase, or different things you can play there or that are interactable. One of them being the fish collection. You meet a guy named Scuba. If you guys watch stream, you know how much pain Scuba brought me during the holotable match. But he is like your fish guy. So like you collect fish and he maintains them and tells you about them. Then you have a flower collection. So you find these seeds around the galaxy, you bring them back and you can choose what you want to plant at your rooftop, which has a bunch of different flower boxes. Then there's the holotable, which I love personally. It was one of my favorite things. I caught myself playing it probably way too much.
Can I please be kind?
So eerily similar to the first game, you scan different enemies once you defeat them. And so once you scan them, they're in your system. All the enemies you've scanned, you can use on the holotable. So if you're only halfway through the game and you don't even have certain characters scanned, for instance, let's say the Droideka or, a certain boss like the Bedlam Hammer guy, then you can't use them on the holo table. And so it was really cool just going around finding new enemies that were hard for you to beat. But once you beat them, you could scan them and go play with them on the holo table. It was real fun. You guys are seeing a clip of it on the table a little bit or on the screen. That was definitely one of my more favorable parts of it. And then obviously, this was one of the more talked about things was the customization of Cal. That was a big part of it, a lot more expansive. There was probably 4 or 5 different parts. You had your hair, top of your hair, you could customize. You had your face. You had your jacket. You had your shirt, and then you had your bottom. Your bottom was your shoes and your pants. So you could kind of choose what you wanted. The jacket and shirt kind of coincided, but you could have, a shirt and undershirt or like a tank top, and then have your jackets sometimes just consisted of like a vest or like a gunnier vest, right? When I say jacket, it was just the top layer of your customization. And you either got different customization things through exploring, the chest that you find is very similar to that. But then something else they kind of added was you could find different currencies, and there's different currencies for different planets. And so each planet kind of had a different guy you could buy stuff from. And so you could buy different customizable stuff for Cal. So that was another really thing that was cool. It's like trying to find, different monies, scrolls or whatever to exchange for customizable parts. Another big thing was obviously the upgradable part. You could upgrade, your force, your healing, and then your lightsaber in the first one. So each lightsaber had its own table of upgradable stuff that you could upgrade, which was awesome because if you didn't really care about, let's say, the crossguard stance, you didn't have to worry about customizing. You could just customize the dual wield and unlock a bunch of dual wield things, right? Like, for instance, the reason I didn't really care too much about the blaster and lightsaber stance is because I had heavily unlocked the dual wield, which let me throw my lightsaber in a couple different ways. I could throw one lightsaber and block with the other. I could throw both, or I could throw a chain reaction where it would bounce off 4 or 5 guys. And so doing that, I just didn't feel like I needed the lightsaber and blaster. So it was really nice having that. And then you had different force abilities you could upgrade. You had your main one, like the time freeze. You had your telekinesis. And so that was just much bigger, which was very nice to have that part as well. And then perks. I didn't feel like the perks, this was like one of the few, I wouldn't say negative, but it was almost irrelevant because you never found yourself upgrading your perks, or even when you equip them, I didn't feel like they did too much, right? Maybe that's something they could work on in the next game, as we'll talk a little bit going forward. But in this game, the perks, it was new, but it only came out at the halfway point, and then I really feel like it didn't have very much importance in the game. But it was a good idea. But it's just too similar to the upgrade table that it didn't even really matter. Like you kind of forgot about it sometimes. And then just kind of a brief story summary. We start off with Cal this is 5 years apart. Well, and that's the biggest thing, is that being 5 years apart, we didn't know what has happened in the 5 years. We kind of figured Cal had been with Seer, Grease, and Marin this whole time, but we find out no, they kind of split up somewhere in the middle of that, and Cal's got a new crew he's been running with. Very early on, all of that crew dies except for one character, Bode. Bode's a pretty important character through this, and I won't go into the summary too many spoilers until the end of this, but that happens, and then pretty much the Empire is like they're not the main villain for the rest of the story. You have multiple villains. I know a lot of people say it's High Republic based, but I feel like the High Republic's presence was just as important as the Bedlam presence or the Empire presence. So there was a lot of cool, different presences of antagonists. So that was nice. And then the ending was pretty good, but we'll get to that on the review part. So there's the breakdown. Now we're kind of going to give you a review. So if you want to skip out of all the spoilers, this is where you should exit off. To start off with, we'll go kind of review the story. I it was very fast paced and mysterious at the same time, which I think is impressive. Because usually when you want a game to be mysterious, like, oh, what is happening? You have to have a more slow pace. And this wasn't slow pace at all, which was unique. It was very fast paced, I felt like. Of course, if you took your time doing a side quest, that was up to you. But if you narrowed your head in the main story, which is kind of what I did for the most part, then it was fast paced. And it was fast paced and mysterious, and I love that. Especially the main villain, the main antagonist for all intents and purposes was Dagon. I can't remember, Dagon Gera or something like that. And then he had his side chick, Ravis. Ravis was a pretty cool guy. And it's the first time that they've done something with High Republic that I found myself intrigued. A lot of High Republic stuff is very slow, boring to me. And I feel like it's pretty universal for Star Wars fans. I don't know why, but it is. I enjoyed the High Republic presence in this game. I think they've done very well with it. Dagon was interesting. His master, all the Jedi from the High Republic that were introduced through the game, through flashbacks or whatever, very interesting. I loved it. The character progression, especially of Cal, was amazing. We really see him mature a lot. I feel like in the first game, it kind of gives us a very reminiscent of young Anakin and Luke, like very immature. He's got a lot of maturing to do. This game brings a lot of like Cal being mature, and that comes through the relationships he builds with certain characters. Major spoiler, so if you can't handle this, please click off. But 2, Seer dies, and that really affects Cal. The other one, Marin and him kind of get this romantic thing going, this romantic relationship, and both of these affect him greatly and mature him greatly. It was, I think both they did really well. The death was amazing. It was done amazing. The Marin relationship was amazing. I feel like the only relationship they didn't do very well was they showed Cordova. And if you played the first game, he's the Jedi who's, this Jedi who's leaving this path for you, but he's supposed to be long gone. He just randomly shows up. He's alive and well. He's been with Seer. And I feel like it was very underwhelming. It's like, whoa, okay, I guess he's alive now. That's crazy. And then he dies. And it was very brief. And it just felt a little bit weird. You know what I mean? I didn't think they should have killed him that early on. But that wasn't too big of a thing for me because I think they just brought him in for plot development, nothing else. I didn't think they were trying to build his character very much. The ending, I like the ending for the most part. They leave it very open-ended, and I think a lot of people didn't like that because it was, the first game left the ending was left very open-ended as well. But I think the way they did this one, they did it very well as in setting up the next game and not setting up, the next game to be in the next couple of years. No, like it feels like, okay, we've got to do something now, right? The premise is they find this planet that they've been searching for. You and Dagon pretty much have this goose hunt of trying to find this key to get to this planet that's really hard to get to. It was interesting. They beat Dagon. They beat Bode because Bode ends up betraying everybody, and that was another character development with Cal and Bode that I thought was very, very interesting. The planet thing I thought was a little goofy. I thought we don't need another big mysterious planet. I feel like we already got so many, but it was good. The gameplay, so like the movement, parkour, for the most part, was really good. It's not a crazy big upgrade from the first one, especially the evading. I feel like it's just sometimes wonky. It wasn't every single time, but if you get yourself in a constrained area and you touch this rock barely, you get stuck on it and you get killed, right? And it didn't happen all the time. And sure, sometimes it's the player, not the game. But I feel like sometimes it wasn't all that responsive, right? didn't happen too often, but sometimes it was frustrating, right? Like you could do the same thing twice in a row and you would get different results both times, which is frustrating.
Can you just hit me through all that? No! Why? God.
But it's not the biggest thing because the rest of the gameplay, movement-wise, was amazing. They only added a couple new things like force lift, force pull down, your dark side mode. All those were awesome. Absolutely loved. Those were great. All the puzzles you had to do, there were certain puzzles you had to do. I didn't do most of them. I tried to skip most of them. They were unique. They were fun. I'm not a big puzzle guy. It turns my brain to mush, but they were fun. They were unique, and that was a good part of it. The last part, all the new stuff, the lightsaber stances, I love. I think that was a great idea. I think if they make this when they make this sequel, not if, they've got to bring that back because that part was amazing. Don't even change. Don't even add anything new. I mean, obviously you can add new upgrades if you want, but the lightsaber stance thing was brilliant. The customization part, amazing. Loved it. All around, it was a really good game. I know this review is a little bit all over the place, but there was just so much that I brought, but at the same time didn't. You know what I mean? I think if I had to be honest, my review, I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. There's very few little things I didn't like, but those things did make it interesting. The evading sometimes being wonky made it frustrating, especially in boss fights, right? The Cordova, I feel like that character and his introduction and then his departure was premature. I think they should have not brought him in and then took him out the way they did. Either don't bring him in at all if you're going to take him out that quick, or wait a little bit longer to take him out because it was just too premature. And both of those things kind of take a half of a point down for me. So I'm going to give it a 9.5. Besides that, I really enjoyed this game a lot. I'm going to keep playing it, try to do more side quests, play more holo table. That was a really fun addition to this game. I enjoyed it. I 100% recommend. I know it's not a cheap price, $60, $70, whatever it is for what platform you play on, but it's worth it to me in my opinion. And there's not many things that are worth $60, $70 for entertainment, but this is one of the few things I would recommend. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm very excited for the sequel. I'm excited to see if they bring some new sets out, Lego sets for this, because there was a lot of cool parts. Let me know what you guys thought of it. There was a couple of you guys who joined stream. That was real fun. But yeah, I really love this. Like I said, thanks for all the guys who joined stream, more girls. It was fun playing that game every day with you guys. Let me know what you guys thought of this game, what you guys thought of this review. But with that, we hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and download if you're on podcast, subscribe and like if you're on YouTube. With that, we hope you guys enjoyed this, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace out.